is to show you how growth hormone is released. It is released in form of pulses. The maximum pulse occurs during night time. So if we do a single test, it will not be diagnostic of growth hormone deficiency, and hence we require the simulated tests. The various tests which are available to us are either pharmacological or physiological. Physiological tests include sleep and exercise, not very specific, hence no longer recommended. The pharmacological tests include clonidine, arginine, levodopa, glucagon, and insulin. The gold standard for doing growth hormone stimulation test is by doing insulin, but in pediatric practice, we generally follow the clonidine stimulation test at OPD basis. The test could be classified as screening test versus confirmatory test. The screening tests basically are easy to do, less toxic, but have very low specificity. And what is this test which we can do? Like I said, exercise, fasting. Clonidine or levodopa can be used as a screening test. The confirmatory test could be done by doing agents like insulin, arginine, or levodopa. They are more cumbersome, more toxic, but are more specific, and hence more logical to do them in the clinical practice. The test can be further classified as hypothalamic or pituitary tests. For pituitary tests, we do the GH-RH stimulation test, which essentially differentiates the cause from hypothalamus or pituitary. The problem is non-availability of GH-RH in clinical practice, and therefore it is not routinely done. For hypothalamus, we do other tests which are already mentioned. These are the various tests which are done in clinical practice. I've just summarized them in one sheet for easy understanding. The doses of various pharmacological agents vary. Insulin stimulation test is the most commonly done test in the dose of 0.1 to 0.15 units per kg. The samples are collected over a period of time, minus 30, that is once we insert the cannula. As we all know, stress is a factor which increases growth hormone secretion. Hence, the minus 30 sample is just taken before we actually start doing the tests. Samples are further collected at 0, 30, 60, 90, 120 minutes. What we do generally in clinical practice is the clonidine test in pediatric practice. The dose which we use for this is 150 micrograms per meter square or 4 milligrams per kg. And we collect the samples 0, 30, 60, 90, and 120 minutes. For clinical practice, we collect the samples at 0 hours, 1 hour, and 2 hours in our routine investigations for growth hormone deficiency. All these tests have a safety issue which has to be considered. The most common side effect of insulin is significant hypoglycemia. So it should always be done in a clinical setup where backup is available if the patient develops hypoglycemia. Clonidine, which we generally do, causes a lot of drowsiness and very rarely causes hypotension, so we need to monitor that. Glucagon test is generally done in newborns, or rather the only test which is advised in newborns, but it can cause significant rebound hypoglycemia, so one has to be careful when we do it with glucagon. L-arginine is a viscous solution, so it can cause a lot of extravasations and leading to necrosis at the site, so no longer recommended. The efficacy and specificity of these tests vary significantly. Insulin has a very high sensitivity, very high specificity, and very high efficacy. So this is the most routinely done and recommended test in clinical practice to diagnose growth hormone deficiency. Clonidine has poor sensitivity and poor specificity, as well as extremely poor reproducibility. Again, insulin tolerance test here has more reproducibility value as well. So commonly recommended test in clinical practice should be insulin tolerance test, but for practical reasons, we do the clonidine stimulation test in OPD practice. Just in brief about clonidine, the dose I already mentioned. The various advantages of this test are, it's an OPD procedure and does not require long-term follow-up. The patient can go home in 4 hours. But disadvantages are it causes significant drowsiness and sometimes can cause prolonged hypoglycemia, which may mask a seizure. There's a lot of controversy regarding what dose one should use to do this test. The recommended dose is 150, but there are a lot of papers which say 150 or 100 micrograms could also suffice in doing this test. Giving growth hormone has a lot of indications. The latest publication from the FDA gives following indication in which growth hormone can be used. For pediatric patients, we commonly use it in growth hormone deficiency conditions and Turner syndrome. We also have tried and been using them in conditions like CRF, SGA babies, and idiopathic short stretchers. Is growth hormone stimulation test required in all these conditions? No. Certain conditions, when we have a syndromic presentation or a CNS pathology, one can get away by giving growth hormone without doing a growth hormone stimulation test. These are some of the indications in which one can give growth hormone without actually subjecting the patient to do a growth hormone stimulation test. So what are the very definitive indications for doing a growth hormone stimulation test? One, when the patient does not meet the authological criteria. So he is short with a poor growth velocity. We will definitely do a stimulation test. Should we do it for children with isolated growth hormone deficiency or with multiple pituitary hormone deficiencies? Isolated conditions are much more common than MPHDs, but the problem is MPHD patients harbor many other silent hormone deficiencies. So GH is only one of the findings which comes to light. So always rule out other deficiencies which can pop up later when you're managing a patient of MPHD. What are the growth hormone values which we should consider as normal or abnormal? There is no consensus statement which has come up of what values we consider as normal or abnormal for growth hormone. A lot of literature search shows a value of less than 7 nanogram per ml considered as growth hormone deficient. A lot of other papers also say at a value of less than 10 nanograms per ml can be indicative of growth hormone deficient condition. What we follow in our lab is a value of less than 5 nanogram per ml is a diagnostic of growth hormone deficiency, and one between 5 to 10 nanogram per ml is indicative of growth hormone insensitivity. Like we understand, it's a spectrum of diseases from normal to growth hormone deficient conditions to growth hormone insensitive syndromes, and hence these values have to be taken into consideration considering the clinical spectrum of the illness as well. There is no data which is normative available for the stimulated growth hormone levels in literature. Many times we recommend doing a second test. Why second test is recommended? Because it improves the discrimination and improves the specificity of these conditions which were low if we do only one condition. So two tests either are done separately or sequentially to diagnose and improve the specificity of a growth hormone deficient condition. What are the various problems which we face when we have growth hormone analysis done? The lab reports depend upon the heterogeneity of analyte which is used. Availability of different preparations and the calibrations of each lab vary. There is interference of the growth hormone binding protein with the lab results, and the conversion units which are used vary from lab to lab, and hence we do not have a true level of growth hormone given to us. Growth hormone is available in two major forms: the 22 kilodaltons, which is the major form of growth hormone available in our body, and also minor form, which is the 20 kilodaltons available. That the analysis is done by either using a monoclonal or pluriclonal antibodies. The monoclonal antibodies have increased variability and they are not clinically significant, and hence preferred method of estimation of growth hormone in practice.